Hey guys, this is me, the Reading King, and Andrew, my buddy. And we just wanted to review this book called The Twits. Andrew, why don't you start reading the back?
How do you outwit a twit? Mr. and Mrs. Twit are the smelliest, nastiest, ugliest people in the world. They hate everything, except playing mean jokes on each other, catching innocent birds to put in their bird pies, and making their caged monkeys, the mugglewumps, stand on their heads all day.
Well, that's very interesting. But the mugglewumps have had enough. They don't just want out, they want revenge. Well, it looks like we're going to have some violence in this book.
Yes.
Hopefully, no cursing. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any cursing. Here's a chapter that starts on page 18 called The Funny Walking Stick. And the reason I like this chapter is that it's just, even though they're the smelliest, nastiest, ugliest people, they are pretty clever, and some of these pranks are pretty funny. And so it's about Mr. Twit putting little pieces of wood on the cane, and it basically, he tricks her into thinking that she is shrinking, and because the cane's dead wood, it can't get larger, so he tricks her into thinking that she's got the shrinks. And why don't you read page 21 for us?
As soon as Miss Twit sat down, Mr. Twit pointed at her and shouted, "There you are! You're sitting in your old chair and you've shrunk so much your feet aren't even touching the ground." Mrs. Twit looked down at her feet, and by golly, the man was right. Her feet were not touching the ground.
I wonder why. I thought there was only wood on the cane. Well, it tells us in the next paragraph. Mr. Twit, you see, had been just as clever with the chair as he had been with the walking stick. Each night, when he had gone downstairs and stuck a little bit extra onto the stick, he had done the same with the four legs of Mrs. Twit's chair. And what do you think about this, Andrew?
I think it's a very clever and funny prank.
Yeah. Good thing it's not harming anybody. Oh no. Mrs. Twit gets a stretching. So, as you can see by the picture here, Mr. Twit has tied her to a bunch of balloons and then tied her to the ground to stretch her back out to fight the shrinks. And then, well, I really hope nothing happens. She could go flying, and that's exactly what happens. So what do you... Eventually, these monkeys, called the Mugglewumps, are introduced to the story, and they escape, and they start pranking the Twits themselves. They take all of the furniture and the carpets and glue it to the ceiling. Remember, they're just monkeys, and they're having some help of the birds because the birds want to get revenge because the birds are being eaten by the Twits. And the Twits actually get the shrinks. "Help me! Save me!"
"Call a doctor," yelled Mr. Twit. "I'm getting the dreaded shrinks."
And so he was. Mrs. Twit was getting the dreaded shrinks too. And this time it wasn't a fake. It was the real thing. Their heads shrank into their necks.
Then their necks began shrinking into their bodies.
And their bodies began shrinking into their legs.
And their legs began shrinking into their feet.
And 1 week later, on a nice sunny afternoon, a man called Fred came round to read the gas meter. When nobody answered the door, Fred peeped into the house, and there he saw, on the floor of the living room,
2 bundles of old clothes, 2 pairs of shoes, and a walking stick.
There was nothing more left in this world of Mr. and Mrs. Twit.
And everyone, including Fred, shouted, "Hooray!"
Yeah, and so right from that couple of sentences, you can get that nobody liked the Twits. And so, how would you feel if someone you knew and despised got the shrinks?
I would be happy because then I wouldn't have to deal with them.
I don't know. I might miss them, but that's an interesting answer. It's cool. So, this book, especially in the beginning, is extremely funny because they go out and have all of these pranks and stuff, like the glass eye prank, the frog prank,
And the wormy spaghetti.
and then finally it all just comes crashing back down on them, and it tells it in a very interesting way. I mean, you'd never know that this was a funny book because the first paragraph is about...
Hairy faces.
Yeah. So, if you like a bit of humor, and it's just a really good book. So, see ya!